Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Even as the elections pick steam, questions linger on what issues need to be discussed. The biggest issue we need to be able to discuss is the food in this country. And we focus especially today on the maize, because these are issues that affect every ordinary Ugandan, whether you're on the echelons of the highest part of this country or the lowest part of this country. We talk about maize, we talk about posho. If you want to even go as far as talking about brand and even coming to conflicts for any level that you are at. 90% of this country depends on the maize there, but also 40%, 0.5 is exported to the different countries within the region. The question of livelihood is a question that lingers all over, but also we look at pests, diseases, but how can we maximize maize, since it's one of those crops that came in the 80s, went on to become a cash crop, but one of those staple foods that is eaten by most Ugandans. Today, I have a panel to discuss matters, livelihood, and food in this country. Let me get to my panel next to me. On my immediate left, making her maiden appearance on our show, Madame Patricia Bagaine Ejalu. She is the Deputy Executive Director at the Uganda National Bureau of Standards. She's with us this evening. Good evening, Patricia, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, Timothy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for making time for us. How has been your week so far?
So far, so good. Not too bad, yeah.
I'm excited to have you because you're the lady with the numbers.
Thank you very much, Timothy. It's an honor to be here.
Pleasure. Next to Doctor is no stranger to the show, Dr. Fred Muhumza, the director at the Economic Forum of MOBS, a think tank that puts together, where should our country be going in its trajectory there? Dr. Muhumza, it's good to have you again.
It's good to be back, and thank you very much, and good evening, our viewers, and whoever is out there, we are happy.
How is the economic constituency?
As long as there is maize to eat, the constituency can come down, but my worry is now the maize may not be there for everybody.
Next to Dr. Muhumza is Dr. Sam Mayanja, a senior lecturer at Makerere University Business School. He's with us this evening, also making his maiden appearance here. Good evening, Doctor, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, Timothy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Next to Dr. Sam is Nice Musana, a policy analyst with Siatini. Good evening, Nice, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, viewers. I breathe trade, I speak trade, and I'm glad to be here.
So after Nice, is it better or nicer?
Everything.
Everything.
In the context, yes.
Lastly but not least, Professor Maurice Ogenga Latigo, the professor of insects, but also a farmer and a senior citizen. Good evening, Professor, and it's good to have you.
Thank you, Timothy, and good evening, viewers. It's a great pleasure to be with these colleagues of mine.
You know, when I had the maize, at some point I said the only person that was missing was insects. So when they said you were coming, I said I'm good to go.
By coincidence, today we start farmer evaluation for the Uganda Best Farmers competition for New Vision.
Oh.
So we went to visit the first today, and the next 2 weeks will be all over the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. And you must be wondering, why are these people discussing maize? These are issues we need to be talking about. In an election year, in a year of where we're wondering, a lot of exports of food today are coming from out of the country. Tanzania went to the polls. The biggest question is, if it goes haywire, what happens to the rice that is coming into this country? Can we consolidate what we have in this country to maximize it to feed us and the region? You can be part of the show to our YouTube channel and our X platform. Get there, we're streaming live, but also to text us or WhatsApp us is the number 0709 60 25 92. Let us know what your thoughts are, especially if you're a farmer and you're struggling in one way or another. This is the show for you today. We come out of the politics, now we're separating the form from the substance. Let's get to it. Dr. Muhumza, even when I was thinking about everything you sent me, I said the best question to start with is the state of the livelihoods of this country, because I'd like us to start from the general, then dig into the maize and look at all those value chains within the maize, because I was amazed at what can be done with maize. But Doctor, let me put it to you. What is the state of livelihoods, especially in hindsight of, I have been here with you and you have said people in the village are now asking people in town to send them food.
Yes.
Give us the state and what it looks like.
And once the people in the village ask the ones in town to send them food, that's likely not to be food grown in Uganda, because the people in town have no gardens.
True.
So it's possible that the people in town imported the maize or the rice or the whatever it is, and now they are sending it to the countryside. Now the livelihoods of the people, as is mentioned, survives on production of food crops. But if now they have no food in the countryside, you get concerned about those livelihoods. Because what is a rural person minus food? For themselves to eat, now they are asking to eat, but also to sell and put something on the market. Growing up in our years, there was food crops and cash crops. Everybody knew that every homestead had the food crop and cash crop.
Yeah.
Now, even before you could plant and harvest, the school knew this is not the season for harvesting maize. So they will not even ask for fees, but they will not chase you because they know the season for maize is coming, the fees will be paid. There was a lot of that. Now, the livelihoods we are seeing today, the schools seem not to have recognized that anymore, but as we've said, because there's no maize and cash crop for everybody, and some food crops are cash crops. So children, like now, they are going to sit their exams, others are already sitting exams. But we all know the maize will be harvested in December and January. So, but the schools are saying if the child has not finished all the fees, you're not going to sit exams. Now, and that's where the money lender and some other person comes in to this person who has a maize garden that's not yet ready. Say, me, I can give you the money. You go and pay the fees, but you are guaranteeing me the maize becomes mine. So whenever you're moving around, you see maize around homesteads, but which is no longer belonging to the homesteads. So that's the kind of livelihood is becoming a little bit more risky, a little bit more dangerous and distracted from the farm that you see. Previous laws have said there would be this like pre-financing. You receive money to solve your problems because people know you are going to harvest. And these scientists had done as well. We used to have the maize borer. Now it went away, so the scientists have done their part. Coffee wilt, they rolled it back. So there was that guarantee and stability that a farmer will always have money when the season comes. And the coffee was also running alongside. So we now have new emerging dynamics that we need to sit and have conversations about. And this is really what excited the Makerere University Business School Economics Forum to say, hey, new things seem to be coming on. Can we as academicians engage this and research so that we can bring some things to the fore for people to debate and come up with recommendations? So the livelihoods are a little bit shaky, some are still strong, but there are certain vulnerabilities that have come in. If I need money now to take a child to school or for health treatment, and I'm a farmer, where do I get money from? That's why the money lenders have come in. And the money lenders, as we know them, may not be working for the positive trend of the farmer. And this conversation cuts across not just maize, but the farmers in general.
And you know, you mentioned food crops and cash crops. That was the distinction between the two. Today, they seem to be unintertwined, where everything is cash crop, everything is food crop. Why have we gotten to this, and is this one of the challenges we're facing?
It shouldn't be a challenge because it was a deliberate effort in the 90s when we came up with structural adjustment program. We wanted to diversify household sources of income. So we went through a program, or what was called non-traditional agricultural exports, so that maize also can become an export crop. Fish can become an export crop. Beans can, and that we have succeeded. Because when you look at what we're sending to South Sudan, to the DRC, these are our big destination markets, to Kenya, there are these things that were not traditional exports. And we diversified. But also now we allowed the homesteads to have more food. Now what we are not sure of is whether the homesteads are producing enough to remain with food and then to earn the cash. Because when you get into commercialization, the president has been saying, everybody in the money economy. Some people get exposed to market risks. They now want money. And we're having these habits that are coming in. Young people want to do better, but they have no money. So they can also steal your maize. Previously, maize wouldn't be stolen that much because it wasn't cash-based. But now there is a market for maize. There's a market for goat. Grow anything, there is a market for it, which is a good thing. Now the challenge is, how do we make sure the homesteads have adequate production? It goes back to the professor of insects will tell us, how do you increase productivity beyond words? Because the president is talking about the 4-acre model. He's right, not even very many people have 4 acres. So we must now get back and say, now that I can't go beyond 4 acres, how do I get the most out of the 2 or the 3 or the 4 acres? That conversation needs to come through. And science needs to answer that, because the business people are also saying, me, I want what to trade. And as we have seen, they are now beginning to trade from anywhere. Our habits are changing. We're eating a lot of grain that is not local. It is wheat, it is rice. When I grew up, rice was 2 days a week in school and had to be brought in by World Food Program. But now, schools are no longer eating maize. They are eating rice. So what becomes of maize? But even now, the rice, if it's not Ugandan rice, are we exposing ourselves to global risks? So there are a number of things coming out of this study that we need to put into the policies, and I am glad everybody in the manifestos, beginning with the President's manifesto, want to consolidate the gains. Some gains are real hot potatoes. We have exposed ourselves, but it's not a bad thing. It's a gain that now everybody wants to grow, get into agriculture for commercial purposes. That is a positive thing. But the market comes with its risks, and we must sustain those risks. So we have found new challenges, good challenges, but how do we engage them beyond talking and conversations?
Thank you. Let me come to Patricia. You know, even looking at everything we're reading, we have the farmers, 90% being outgrowers, small-scale farmers there. We have the millers, we have the middlemen, we have the markets, we have value addition. What do the numbers look like, especially when you look at where we are and what you project for us to look like?
Thank you very much, Timothy. The numbers looking, especially in the grain sector right now, we can talk about, as far as UNBS is concerned, and we are the ones who offer certification to the grain product so that they can enter the market. We have received increasing numbers, increased applications for people who want to meet the requirements for the market. Just giving an example, at the end of the last financial year, just grain products alone, that is grain as the grain itself, maize, and milled flour, over 700 applications, out of which about 349 managed to achieve certification. So what does that say? The desire to meet the requirements so that people can trade in the market has grown. We know, and as Dr. Fred has just mentioned, it's not just about Uganda, it's about the East African market, it's about the global market. Now, for grain products, our #1 market is East Africa. And people have realized that the neighbors are beginning to say, there's something wrong with your product, do something about it. So the numbers are growing in terms of value addition. We have more applications for milled flour than we do for the grain on its own.
Yes.
Just to give you an example, I mentioned 700. Out of those, over 450 are for the flour alone. The grain alone comes to about 28. So more people are doing value addition. And it's not just for milled flour. When it comes to grains, there's vegetable oil that's coming from there. We have food snacks. There are so many people investing in value addition for food snacks, for different things, and we are seeing the numbers growing. So the potential is there. And we have to think about the Ugandan market, we have to think about the East African market.
What are we missing? Those are very beautiful numbers, especially when you speak about them. 450, but I also saw at some point there were about 1,000 millers in 2019, and you only gave 23. These are beautiful numbers. Where are we missing the link between your numbers and improving this hopeful picture?
Yeah, a big issue is the lack of information. Not many people know what they need to be able to enter the market and trade progressively. We need to get information out there about standards. What are standards? What does it mean to meet those standards? That information is not available, and we need people to know, because people perish for lack of knowledge. They just don't have the information that's needed for them to be able to progress. And then the understanding that you need to meet market requirements. I think we've known that the markets now have changed. There's even a bigger push towards the urban center, isn't it? We have people, less people doing the actual growing, and many people going towards the urban center. So people in the urban centers are requiring produce that has been added some kind of value so that they can eat. So you can see that the numbers are now beginning to change. People are having to ask that question, what do I need to do to enter the market? So we need to make a big push in getting the right information out there. the level of compliance. We need to move away from the small business and start getting people to work together. Aggregation of grain, instead of leaving farmers to be on their own, can they be aggregated into groups which can now be more organized in collecting quality grain? As they do that, the big buyers are available. We have the millers available, we have the exporters, and they are willing to go and buy from those who have quality grain. So how can we bring people together to reduce this small business that is not sustainable, bringing them together, helping them to spread their resource so that they don't have to feel the pinch on their own. And that way we'll get even bigger numbers.
Interesting, thank you very much. Let me come to Dr. Sam. Doctor, when you look at what Doctor has spoken about and what Patricia has spoken about, what challenges do you see with this grain that especially could be turning to gold if we harness it well?
Thank you, Timothy. When we went out to conduct this study, we are trying to answer the question whether Uganda can feed East and Southern Africa. And our hypothesis was a yes and a no. And we found out that maize is a traditional cereal crop grown widely in Africa, and the 2 million Ugandans survive. Their livelihood is based on maize for food and the income. Uganda has a potential to feed her people, East and Southern Africa, but also we have not taken advantage of the markets we have. Uganda is land-linked to Tanzania, to Rwanda, DRC, South Sudan, and all the Burundi, and all these are markets that we can take advantage of. Come back to your question, what are the challenges? So we found out that as much as Uganda exports maize, it also equally imports maize from Tanzania. Whenever we have shortages of maize in the country, we import from Tanzania. When I was in South Sudan, I asked them where do they get their maize from. They said the Ugandan maize flour is very, very good. I asked them, do you know where the maize come from? They said, we don't care about what we know, that maize come from Uganda. So whenever Uganda has shortages, it also imports from Tanzania. But whenever Tanzania also has challenges, doesn't have enough, they also block their maize. And that's why the country experiences shortage of food whenever we have climate or weather conditions. And that's one of the challenges we have. Number two is that Uganda, we have 3.8% that produce more than 10 acres in Uganda.
True.
Yeah, those are commercial farmers. So the rest are fragmented smallholder farmers with fragmented land. Now, when you have smallholder farmers, they will never produce enough and they cannot sustain a market. But also they have challenges of high cost of production, but also they have issues of quality. Now, Patricia talked about aggregators. Aggregators were also complaining that they don't have enough maize. But also as they aggregate, they have maize from different sources, and which compromises quality. We don't have traceability that this is the source where the maize came from. So if you aggregate maize from Masindi and others from Kapchorwa, they grow in totally different weather conditions. And this compromises our quality. But also, the other challenge was value addition. Our maize, most of it is exported in grains, and Kenya strictly doesn't want maize flour because for them they want fortified maize flour. Now that's why Kenyans have started growing maize in Uganda to be able to satisfy their market, and for them at home they satisfy. But for us, we export maize flour without any value addition. And that means that the revenue, the income that comes from that is very, very low. We have a challenge of quality. Our maize is not homogeneous. We have so many maize breeds on the market, and different farmers also plant different maize breeds. When we visited the commercial farmers in Noya, they complained about the quality of seeds, because for them they use planters when they are planting maize. And they said now when the planter is moving, because some of these maize grains are not of the same size, some of them broke the hole where the seeds are supposed to go through. Now the planter is moving, the seeds are not being planted. Now you move 5 acres, 10 acres, when there is no planting. Now, After a week, when you go to check whether the maize has germinated, that's when you realize 5 acres were not planted. Now, you cannot take the plant again to plant that maize because it will now destroy the other one which it planted. So you have to use manual labor to plant, and now the manual labor, it cannot plant the way the machine has been planting. So you are losing on production, but also you're going to miss on productivity. But also you have the issue of aflatoxins. You remember what happened with South Sudan? They rejected our maize, Kenya rejected our maize, and this comes from the planting, how we handle post-harvesting. Smallholder farmers don't have stores. They sleep with their maize, and that compromises the quality. So if you have smallholder farmers, you cannot commercialize agriculture. You cannot feed the country when you have smallholder farmers who produce for home consumption. And as Dr. Muhumu's alluded to, these are people who are looking for money to pay school fees. They can mortgage their maize when it has just been planted. And by the time the maize is ready, they have nothing to sell. So, but also Uganda has had a challenge whereby we don't be able to fulfill our, when we get contracts, we fail to fulfill the contracts because of that uncertainty. We don't have storage facilities whereby you have a buffer stock that in case you have bad weather condition, you can use that stock in the silos. We don't have that. One of our colleagues visited Zambia, and they wanted maize from Uganda because Zambia signed the MOU with the DRC, and the DRC had a food shortage. Now Zambia had enough stock in their silos. Now they had a very bad weather condition for a whole year. Now the priority was to feed her people. So they had no maize to export. They contacted Uganda whether it could come and rescue. No one was willing to commit himself in Uganda to take the maize there because even the exporters didn't have enough maize, what we need. So we cannot commit ourselves on quality. We cannot commit ourselves on quantity. So we have poor quality seeds as inputs, and the output is low, and also the cost of production in Uganda is very high. So we still have that question: can Uganda feed her people, East and Southern Africa?
And very glaring challenges that you mentioned there, and we'll come to articulate each of them when we get to that. Nice, let me come to you. You, earlier on this year, as Siatini, went and had a launch of bylaws up in the north. What was this all about? And how far have you gone with moving forward with it?
Thank you so much, Timothy. We launched the 2 bylaws in Amuru and Gulu district. One was in Guruguru sub-county, that is in Amuru district, and another bylaw was in Paicho sub-county in Gulu district. But the whole essence as to why we had to intervene into this was the issue to do with standards compliance and the poor quality. We undertook a baseline survey and established a number of findings, and they were a bit appalling. Practices such as drying maize grain on the ground, which makes it prone to aflatoxin contamination, practices like stepping on the maize, poor post-harvest handling, and even the storage facilities that the farmers were using were also of poor quality. We also established that a number of farmers, especially in the region, were not aware of these standards. We talk about the USEAS 2, USEAS 44. They are not aware of these things. There was actually need for building the capacity of these farmers to understand what is certification, what do these standards even mean, because a number of rejections of our maize at the South Sudan border, especially at Elegu market, became rampant, and so we needed to build the capacity of the farmers, but also of the millers, and also the entire value chain, to see that they appreciate what's the importance of complying to standards. And remember, when South Sudan rejected that maize. We don't know where it went. And there are cases, they say it could be somewhere, some people take it, but we don't know whether it was destroyed or not. But we need to address, those are some of the issues, because indeed we have also issues of discrepancies, especially when it comes to standards compliance, because we question those, the people who are working at the border. And we are like, why is it that if maize is coming from Uganda and it has passed the certification and also the laboratory tests and it reaches South Sudan, it is rejected? There are some frictions. There's some friction on how farmers could, even the traders can easily comply with these standards. So you might find that maybe they require a moisture content of maybe 13.5%, and then the moisture content of what we are selling to South Sudan is a bit higher. So there is need also to educate our traders, the millers, and also all the value chain actors to appreciate how do they produce to the market that they intend to ship their products to. And we also worked with UNBS, and they supported us, especially in the trainings that we had. We also worked with Ministry of Agriculture, but also we worked with the local government in the two districts of Gulu and Amuru districts. We worked with the agricultural officers, but they decried the limited extension services. One extension worker to 1,000 farmers, ideally, it is a very huge margin, because they won't reach out to everyone. And ideally, if you look at the way it is structured, is that it is demand driven. So when we talked to the extension workers, actually they were knowledgeable. They were knowledgeable about the standards. They were even knowledgeable about even the best practices. But they lacked the facilitation to reach out to all these farmers in these regions. And to give you a picture, these are quite distant places, because if you look at Guruguru sub-county, yes, it is quite distant from even the central, from the center. You look at Paicho. The value chain actors actually so spaced out, and if an extension worker to reach out to those farmers, it's a great expense they have to incur. But there was need to ensure that the standards are enforced at the local level, because if the farmers do not appreciate that there are standards at the national level, there is need to localize the enforcement at the local level. And how does that come? Through the bylaws. So we undertook a number of engagements, consultations with the farmers and also all the district officials. And I'm glad to say that the bylaws are operational. However, there was need to cascade now these bylaws to the level of ordinances, because that's where they reach a greater capture of the entire districts. Yeah.
Have you localized them?
Right now they are at sub-county level, because it was basically Guruguru sub-county and Paicho, and we needed to fast-track the process. But however, if you look at the process of development of a bylaw, it's a bit shorter. But an ordinance, it has a longer process. It has to be gazetted by the ministry, and that kind of takes a longer period. We helped support the development of the ordinance in Nakaseke, the maize ordinance in Nakaseke, and it is operational there. But however, we also wanted to do the same also in Gulu and Amuru district, but given the limited time, we had to opt for the bylaws, but they were approved. They were approved, and actually they are right now in operation in the two sub-counties.
Thank you. Let me come to Professor. Professor, now let's dig in a little bit into this thing. You were doing a lot of farming in Noya. I've also been to Amur, I've been to Gulu. towards yesterday. I was in Kayunga trying to understand what's happening. I tried to get on ground to see how people... Farming, agriculture is not for the faint-hearted. The inputs, he spoke about planter, combined harvester, for anyone who is commercial, but for also small farm holders, pesticides, fertilizer are not cheap. You have been a farmer. How did you do it? And when you look at this grain, what opportunities do we have?
Well, that's a tough question. You see, I did agriculture when I was a kid. I grew up in farming, and then I came and did agriculture as a course, and I got a degree in agriculture, and I've exposed myself to many things, including research. The fundamental thing that we miss in our country is the recognition that agriculture is a way of life. It's not a wake up today and tomorrow you sleep. No. It is a way of life. And therefore, when you want to build Uganda's agriculture, you must be defined what kind of life do you want to build for the people. A farmer in Amoro that has land, you ask yourself, what in 20 years, what should this farmer be? And when you do all those things to make him be what you project or what you desire, the outcome is that the agriculture will change, the issue of quality will be addressed as a development process. Unfortunately, in Uganda, we abandoned that. In the past, if you had key crops like cotton and coffee, the Wazungus, they made sure you did a number of things. It is your cotton, yes, but you must plant it according to the required spacing, and at the time that you are supposed to plant. Coffee, even the name Kiboko, it was something that you had to do to achieve. For them, the objective was that if we make these people do these things, we'll get the product that we need. But in that process, the cotton farmer became a successful person. The coffee farmer became a successful person. And the country became a very progressive country. And that is what made us grow up. Kalong in the 1960s, you could get Uganda gas every day. 10 o'clock, it would be in Kalong, printed here in Kampala. Our neighbor had a supermarket where you could go and buy wine and chocolate and dates. It's not because of anything. It was because people were grounded in production. If in our place, if you don't have a sister, you have to cultivate and buy cattle before you could marry those days. So you are forced to grow cotton enough to sell, to meet your basic needs, but enough to invest in cows so that you can marry. Now that fundamentally is missing. And all these challenges that we have had is related to that basic core thing. The individual is an individual. It's like a papyrus floating on the water. If you want that papyrus to go to a particular place, you have to guide how the water flows. It's as simple as that. And until we recognize that, I would want to see agriculture re-centralized, so that the central government, which has the bigger picture of the country, plans about the country and its people. And the lower level people implement. And when they implement, and including the bylaws, you know, Wazungus, when they were settlers in Kenya, many of them were maize growers. And do you know what they did to make sure that there was no competition? They used to say that you cannot grow maize where you grow cotton, because pests from cotton, maize will attack cotton. No. Because these two crops grow at different times. But the idea was that if we grew, and it was so easy for us in this environment where you have 2 seasons, while they're waiting for 1 season to harvest, that you'd outcompete them. And they didn't discuss it with anybody. They just implemented it as a policy and as a law. And that is what we need to do. Can we sit down as Uganda? Because time is running out for us. The population that understood agriculture is dwindling. Our children, none of our children will pick a hoe and go to dig. What are we going to do? Who is going to feed us before we feed Eastern and Southern Africa? So it is as fundamental as that. But if we can, the details on varieties, on time of planting, those are just elements that can be worked on. If the framework is right, these elements will fit in, and we'll be successful. Right now we are talking about maize. I got funding to grow maize, soybean, and beans. The government, the loan, but the process took long. Now, when I got the money, I rushed to plant. I had the capacity to understand that there are new Zimbabwean variety hybrids. One is 74 days. It would have matured. Now, I go and plant this maize. In our place, what people do is they will plant millet and pigeon peas, and they put sorghum. And when you harvest this, now the sorghum is maturing. But now their sorghum is maturing with my maize. And they said, oh, but we can plant maize in the 2nd season. But who is going to tell them? The extension system doesn't work. There's no national coordination, because you're growing maize in Bunyoro, in Acholi, in all parts of the country, with each of those small districts having its own extension officer and linked to the next district. It will not happen. And so for me, the rest of the things that my colleagues have talked about are details. Without the fundamental, those details will just be a lamentation.
Professor, staying with you before I get to Dr. Mumza, how much role or impact should government have in the involvement of, especially as we're talking about maize? Let's talk about this one plant called maize. And if we get it right with the fundamentals you're talking about, it can have a ripple effect to the others. How much is government supposed to play in really influencing this? You say the national level, and why isn't there government will to do this?
The government is what makes us call ourselves Ugandans. Otherwise, I will just be some Acholi from Agago. The national framework is government. It is not the individual. So it is the responsibility of government to ensure that its policies and programs are comprehensive and sufficiently linked to uplift the country. And that's where you get credit that you have served the country and there's been progress and change. I can tell you, we were even just talking about it. You go to home in the village and you don't want to go back. Young people, young boys, young girls, who in our times either were in schools or would be working very closely with the parents producing. In the morning I'm going to my field, you see them very smartly dressed, they're heading to town. Young kids, young girls, 14, 15, she's walking with a child. If you look suddenly, you think that child belongs to maybe a sister she's only looking after, but it's us. Just go anywhere and look at the number of small kids that were consequences of the COVID redundancies, for example. And then we are talking about maize now. What is going to happen? If we don't link our talk about maize, about agriculture, to the reality of who our people in rural communities are, and what must we do to tap their potential. If you make, when the colonialists came, there was too much starvation in West Nile. And they made growing cassava mandatory. And hunger ended in West Nile. Up to now, there are the huge cassava eaters. So there are things that government must has the responsibility. Put your feet down and say you have learned in this place by such a date maize must be planted, and they must be planted in the proper way that maize should be planted by law. And once the maize is ready, make sure you have removed the stalks. This is how it must be dried. I can tell you, if you do that, within 2, 3, 4 years, there will be change. Can Uganda feed the region? If we do the right things, yes, because Kenya started from the top with the white farmers, and they have slid down. They are not able to feed themselves on certain crops. Zimbabwe started from the top, white farmers, and they slid down. Ours, we were just in general Eden and enjoying ourselves. But if we can take the opportunity, when some of us who saw the past and are willing to participate are still there, and we do these things collectively, I can tell you that Uganda will be the food basket of all this region. It will not just be about maize only.
Thank you. Dr. Fred, you know, he speaks about having it at a national level and it having a trickle-down effect. But also there are three things that when you put farmers, millers, middle players, exporters, there are three things that play for them: infrastructure, power, but also markets, access to these markets. And I'll come to Patricia about standards there. When you see these enablers, I was amazed to be able to see, he spoke about handling and what you need for horsepower of a machine to mill and clean, then also access to markets. It's not readily available. What can we do about especially promoting that with these three enablers that seem to be wobbling?
Yeah, I think he's mentioned, and the three enablers you're talking about are really within the realm of government. Those roads, those energy, and a lot of things, including standards.
Sorry, and this week I was really watching videos about the elections. At some point, the president's convoy also had to stop somewhere because the road was not accessible.
Yes.
Honorable Chagulanyi had the same, so you see the infrastructure has a problem.
Yes.
Then I was also watching a gentleman, he had the maize, 15,000 kilograms, but he had no market.
Yes. And really credit, I said, General Katumba Wamala at one point made my day as Minister of Transport. When he said, the following roads, I will do something. The following roads, nothing. On these, I will do because of my budgetary constraints. Now, you can put money through production, PDM. The FUS was supposed to pick the maize from these individuals so that they can recover their money and kickstart. And he has told us these are 2 million people, 2 million households rather, engaged in maize. But these are other crops as well. Can't get out. So what story are we posting to for the 4-acre model person? And those are very few. Majority of the people are smaller than that if you don't do infrastructure. And this is what I think Professor is mentioning. All the pieces must be in place. Tell people this is the planting season. Everybody should be planting. But now the people who are working on the road network, the school system, we should know how we are coordinating all these. That is government. As an individual, I may not know. Growing up, there used to be cattle dips, where everybody with cows, you must take them over the weekend and dip them. So the problem of ticks, because some people are not spraying, others are spraying, others are what, was not there. But it was being enforced at the local government level. Now, we decentralized, really this is what I think at the back of our minds, that the extension service people will be there.
And they were central government extension
Yes.
staff.
Well recruited, trained, facilitated, and you'd see them. Now with all these pieces now not adding up, the stars are not aligned, it becomes very difficult for us even to feed ourselves. So these studies are bringing up important things to say. First of all, can we have government? Kiboko is still Kiboko. It was government. I remember when people banned Amin's interaction with the global world in 1975, they said every homestead must have cotton. We all planted cotton. I saw my father, we were young, we couldn't dig enough sizable 40 by 40. He had to hire people because even him had to comply. He was a district education officer. But it didn't matter who you are, whether you are a bishop, whether you're a trader, whether you had to have a garden of cotton. And that year, Uganda's cotton is still on record. That is government. So I think one of the things we need to rethink is beyond elections, beyond talking, where is this government at the grassroots? The rubber is not a rubber tire until the rubber touches the ground. So we are going to sit here as aggregators, but the aggregator must, what am I aggregating? Did people plant? But if they plant, what did they plant? What seed was that? Because if you look through globally, production of grain, including maize, has grown. This is over $300 billion worth of a business at global level. But what has been driving this is this conversation of what are you planting? Are you following the spacing? Are you following the timing of when you should weed? Now these are things that should not be left to a farmer to say, I'm sick, I think I'll weed next week. The weeds are eating the same nutrients meant for the maize. So if you don't weed out the weeds, the maize cob you will get is a quarter of what you would have gotten. And then your cost of production, because you put in the same effort in the acre, you can't get a return. You can't get the tonnage per acre. But these are things where the limits of that extension service will say, everybody, this is the spacing. This week we are all planting. After 6 weeks we are all should have done the weeding. Now the aggregator begins to say, yeah, I can see maize there. He will come. Just like the bees come. When they see where there is pollen, they will come. There are certain things that will fall in place, but can we fix the upstream? Which requires, as we've said, a lot of our farmers require that support. So these bylaws, they must be there, but also there must be somebody who enforces them. And that is government. That for me was the gist of decentralization. But now we want districts, we want town councils for political reasons. Because me and Patricia have quarreled over a space, we split it. Okay, let's create a town council here. So I become the mayor, she becomes the member of parliament. And then we all wait for government to subsidize us at the expense of production. So we've got to get back and say what matters most. Can we ensure government does it? And once it is done, the people will comply. Don't give them an option. And then we'll begin to see the maize go back to the levels that it was, both in quantity and quality. And your aggregators will fall in place. Financing is another big task.
Yeah.
And what we say, when you are financing the farmer, it is easy to give the farmer money, PDM, agricultural credit facility. Who is financing the FUSO person? Because it's the aggregator. The storage. That guy is going to go to a bank and borrow at 35%. He will have to pay the farmer a very low price to recover money to pay the loan, because he needs to secure his track. So we need value chain financing. Everybody must be aligned. So we are finding out that these things, and as Professor said, this is not rocket science. These are things we know. They have been done before. Growing up, there used to be these produce marketing board trucks. We would run after them, we would see. There were the few trucks we would see. Coffee marketing board was for coffee, lint marketing board was for cotton, produce marketing was for all the other produce. And they were there. Now, who is going to harvest? And the roads, as we've said, it's not just about having the track. That culvert can cut off an entire set of villages. But all we are posting on our website is number of tarmac roads. But before the tarmac road and beyond the tarmac road is where the real problem is. And I liked it when the president said, can we have Maram roads maintained? A Maram road is a road. Doesn't have to be tarmac. But can you make sure it is maintained 24/7? So for me, government needs to align the stars and become government all the time. Her work will be easier.
And before I get to Patricia, this monster called the Grain Council, what is it? How effective is it? And why isn't it biting?
I'm going to give it to her, but I just want to arrange the words as you've said them. You can't have a council minus the grain. It's called the Grain Council. Can we first have the grain before the council? Patricia.
Yes, Patricia. This animal called the Grain Council, it has a grain policy. But it backed once, never beat. We're still waiting for it to show up and find the grain.
Okay. Oh, I think I need to bring some positiveness here, you know. It's not all bleak. And yes, the government has begun to do exactly what is being asked. Through the Ministry of Trade and Industry, that's the grain policy's home. They got the National Coordination Forum to come and sit together. And that's where government entities and private sector have sat together to talk about this for the last 2 years. And at the beginning, that's when the Grain Council also had made a very big push, and they were requesting, can we get help in the grain sector? And so the National Coordination Forum came together. It was very clear that we don't even have to start by creating anything new. There are laws that exist that need to be implemented. Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, UNBS. Those two, the SPS permit and the Q mark, making sure that the value chain is covered, is a place to start. We can add value as we go forward, but those two are key. And that's what's happening right now. We have sat down with MAIF and we have come out with standard operating procedures, because the greatest market was a market for grain that has no standards, and it's just being taken, especially to our neighbors. They add value to it and sell it back to us at a higher price. What are we doing? So the issue was to stop the exit of a market for products that are not meeting standards. So nothing is going to leave this country. They will not, MAIF will not issue the SPS permit unless you have the Q mark, because the Q mark will have made sure your process is under control. We have worked together. It was, we were doing a project that was supported by IFC, and we piloted Mubende. We all know Mubende is a very great grain producing area. And we had the aggregators coming to get certification. They had never done these things before. So they had now started asking those questions. Where am I buying my grain for? What's the quality of my grain? And we managed to get these people certified. And this product, it didn't stop there. It also got big buyers to come together with these people so that they can know each other. The PPDA was part of this program. You must be aware that PPDA has issued guidelines. One of the ways to get people to force the issue of standards is to make sure the biggest buyer is buying quality. So government cannot buy grain that is not certified. And they have issued guidelines to make sure the schools, the army, anybody who is buying grain, you must buy what has already been certified. That is what was pushing those big numbers I was telling you about. So the National Coordination Forum has sat down and begun this. And I'm very hopeful, as Professor Latigo has mentioned, the next 3-4 years, you're going to see a huge impact. We only did the pilot with Muvende, but this can be replicated elsewhere. The bylaws in Muvende are there as well to help, because the local government has its role to play. When you see the coordination that's working there, local government is doing its bit in the district. The procurement entity has done its bit. UNBS and Maize have done their bit. And the private sector, the Grain Council is in there. So their members are getting certification and have actually held a lot of stakeholder engagement to get the people who deal in grain to understand the issue of standards. So there has been a very big effort to start this. We've begun it, and I'm very sure there's going to be a lot of progress. The issue is to sustain this. Yes, we've done a pilot with Muvende. This needs to be replicated with all the other areas. And what Siatini has mentioned, at least there's some work done at the north. Let's get the main grain areas to follow suit. And I'll not lie to you, the impact of what we had started with the grain, looking at maize. Do you know what has overtaken the grain? Beans. The quality of beans has overtaken the quality of grain. We have people who are certifying beans and now even adding value and making different products from the beans because of the effort that was done in maize. So it's not all terrible. There is a very good effort that is coming up to help us get to what has been mentioned, that coordination. The issue about coordination is so important because you're not going to solve this problem one silver bullet. Every part has to be handled to make sure the value chain is closed. I wanted to add just a little bit as well as on the issue of the South Sudan. Yes, remember, the grain did not just disappear. If something fails, it has to be re-imported and it has to go through import inspection because it had already crossed. So coming back, they have to deal with us again. And those that failed, depending on the level of failure, there was rework allowed, witnessed reprocessing to make sure it meets standards. There was seizing of items. We even took people, prosecuted them for having failed. But please remember that there's also a lot of the negative put forward and not mentioning the ones that passed. When we had the biggest crisis, there were about 47 trucks that came back. They didn't mention the over 400 which had passed. So all this noise was about 47 trucks that had come back. So the issue is that, yes, we don't want to have any of these trucks coming back. But we had at least reduced that. And by the time we had finished around November 2023, 97% of the trucks were passing. So the numbers had come down. Now, in the EAC, we have what we call the harmonized standards. The standards my colleague was mentioning, EAS 2 and 44, these are standards that apply to these products throughout the EAC. And we have a mutual recognition of each other's quality marks. Meaning if you have the Q mark from Uganda, you can go to Kenya, they will not inspect you. You have KEBS, you can go to Rwanda, they will not inspect you again. So we have that mutual arrangement within the EAC. And those standards are all available. So what we need is for people to understand this is the requirement of what you need to go through to meet that standard, and you'll be able to trade. So it's not all bleak.
Timothy, we still have a question. She talked of Muvende. We all know about the road to Muvende. So the question remains.
But also to comfort Patricia, and it's very good you mentioned the 400 and the 47 that returned.
Yeah.
If a dog bites a man, that's not a story. When the man bites the dog,
then
that is a story. But coming back to you, and
actually the issue of that, the grain stoppage and for South Sudan,
yes.
In the agricultural finance yearbook of the last one, I edited it, and that's when I got the story.
Yeah. Patricia, staying with you, you mentioned standards. But I want to make it a twofold question. One, are there standards across the value chain, especially from the farmer to the miller to the exporter? Are there standards? But also, can the standards be made, for lack of a better word, as idiosyncratic as possible? Where it is 1, 2, 3, you get a tapling like they are doing in Gulu, you don't have it, let's support you. Are there those standards? And you talk about certification, but there's also fortified that he spoke about.
Correct.
What is the difference there? And also, why isn't this information cascading down to the last person?
Yeah. Okay, let's see if I can have, yes, the standards that are available, and you mentioned, do these standards apply for the whole value chain? The standards available apply for the whole value chain. We have standards for the grain from the very beginning. We have standards for the added value products. We have standards for the processors, the good manufacturing practices that they have to follow to ensure that they meet the requirements. And we have simplified these standards using simple language and pictorials, basic things telling you, use the tarpaulin, raise the granary, you know, the kind of things that someone will understand, so that at different levels, there's what you're required to do at the very beginning, and then as you go up the value chain, the restrictions become a little bit higher. So the standards are available. As far as the maize value chain is concerned, all the standards are there that are needed to be followed by everyone along the value chain. Yeah.
The red tape.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things we admire is that Uganda Investment Authority decided to bring all these entities together.
Correct.
There's a lot of red tape. There is the export promotions. There is UNBS. There is, you go through hurdles to be able to get your grain somewhere. The frustration within this, how are you rectifying this challenge?
Well, I think like what you've said, UI has brought people together. But I want us to also begin to understand why all these entities are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Remember, we are not an island. It is not that Uganda exists here and other countries don't. We are doing exactly what is an international way of demonstrating that we can meet standards. So the issue is this: we've established that we are not duplicating issues, but we must empower ourselves with information. What information do I get from export promotion to help me to export? What information do I get from UNBS to help me meet the standards? These are necessary. You're not going to get away from this. You know, you want to compete with people, but you don't want to do the work. You are going to have to do the work. Let us understand what are the requirements and why they are needed, so that we empower ourselves. There's too much talk about, oh, there's too much of this and too much of that. My friends, the Uganda standard, which is an East African standard, you are going to have to meet it if you're going to trade within the EAC. It's not a bureaucracy, it is a requirement that you must follow. And what are we asking? You're talking about cleanliness. I think you mentioned the word, it's not rocket science. You're talking about being clean. You're talking about knowing your raw material and where you got it from. You're talking about the hygiene of your workers. You're talking about a record. One of the challenges we have is keeping records. Where do you source what you are sourcing? How do you track what you've been producing? So this is what people learn when they are implementing standards. So it's not always, oh, there's too much. You know, you end up removing everything, and then you will not qualify to compete with just your neighbor. So let's first understand what each entity is bringing to the table, and let's educate ourselves, because the more knowledge you have, the easier it gets for you to be able to qualify for whatever it is that you need.
Except here in Kampala, where else is UNBS?
UNBS has, we have regional offices. We have an office in Gulu, we have an office in Mbarara, we have an office in Mbale with labs. So you're able to get certification services from those 3 regions. We have offices in Lira, which deal with primarily weights and measures, and we have in Jinja as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Sam, let me come to you. You are one of the people behind the thinking of this maize and how we can turn it around. But let's talk about the poverty levels. Protecting the Gain says it has dropped from about 20 to 16.1%. But there's also a new animal called the multi-dimensional poverty. If you move around today in Kampala, you can see how many children have not gone to school this term. But also you look at how, you know, households, how many households can have more than 2 meals a day. There is poverty. There is also the power. The fluctuation of power is just a whole different animal. There is climate change. This year alone has been very surprising with rains. So when you did this study, did these challenges really show up, and what does that mean for the grain that we're all looking at?
Yeah, thank you, Timothy. When you look at poverty at household level, we already alluded to that most of the farmers are smallholder farmers, having less than 2 acres. And the cost of producing 2 acres are extremely high, because we talked about the cost of inputs is really, really high. Okay, but before I come to that, most of the commercial farmers complained about seeds not being standardized. This comes from the multiplication of quality seeds, so to increase the weight. Yes. Now the commercial farmers don't have time to sort out maize there and then. They just weigh and put it in the store. Now when they are sorting out, that's when they realize that they have bricks, they have big stones in the maize. So the question of ethics of our farmers, go back to what Professor Latiko has talked about. Do you have a framework that enforces quality from the top to the bottom?
From the bottom up.
Yes, the framework from top, then that enforces that up to the bottom. Because the ethics among the farmers is going high, and that's why commercial farmers don't want to deal with the outgrowers. Now when we talk about poverty, most of these farmers don't plant maize more than 2 acres. And all the needs of the family are put on the 2 acres. So what they do, they mortgage the maize before it is mature to get school fees. Now we talked about aggregating maize. A poor person cannot allow you to aggregate because they sell it when it's still in the garden. And that's how poverty is increasing. And they want to meet immediate needs. So they cannot be part of the value chain. And you cannot commercialize smallholder farmers. And you cannot feed the country using smallholder farmers. So we have the question of the land. The land question comes in. So how do we have commercial farmers when the land is aggregated? Now the issue of power, the maize millers complained about that, and that's why they work at night. Okay, but yes.
But the unit is still the same cost.
Yes, but also how much maize do you have? Now, if you have a maize mill and you work 2 months, and the 1 month you are not working, the rate of depreciation is higher than when you are working. So if you expected to recoup back your money in the maize mill in 3 years, you find that you have not done so, because the machine has depreciated, the cost of milling is high, and you have also they talked about maintaining skilled labor, because you have people today, and when the machine is not working, you let them go. But also they look for
better alternatives
to keep them. What was the third issue?
No, let me read some feedback, then come back to you.
Right.
But Professor, I want to leave something with you that when we come back from the break, you will respond to. And I think Dr. Mums has hinted on it here on the show. A border economy versus the claim of us being an agricultural backbone of the country. How does that work? But let me read some feedback here. Good evening, Timothy. Thank you for the show. Thank you for the topic that matters. Maize, the type we grow, are not nutritious compared to our traditional grain, which are nutritious, have been relegated to margins. The Americans eat corn, which is nutritious. Our maize is meant to feed animals. Professor Latigo is right to tell us whether maize is the only food. Professor Latigo should tell us if maize is the only starch that we should eat. Also GMOs in the market, what is the policy there? Okay. I am Hakim. How do I get certified, and what are the requirements? I think you respond to that. Then Kafero says, I am Kafero from Entebbe. Thank you for the program, Timothy. The weather patterns and the climate change must be affecting the production of maize. Is this true, and what is the solution? Dr. Sam will respond to that. Finally, before we take a break, this is Timothy, thank you for the show. Uganda has immense potential to feed East and Southern Africa with maize. With our fertile soils, favorable climate, youthful population eager to work, We define to become a breadbasket of the region. However, we need to address the challenges to improve agriculture, infrastructure, access to markets, support our farmers, modern farming techniques. Let's harness potential and make Uganda a maize hub for Africa. This is Humphrey from Munyonyo. There was someone from Naro that I really, when I find your message, I'll be able to get to it there. But let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking everything maize here.
The government's core mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of a roadmap is innovation and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
It's going to be a tall project. That answers somebody's question.
For the past 20 weeks, the front bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice, and commerce.
Why do you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers? You bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge, these are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport. If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Now airing every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Jethro Kasaiji, your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda.
Ugandans, the unstoppable internet deal of deals is here with MTN Wakanet Fiber. Connect your home with our starter pack of 100 Mbps at only 99k. And if you want more speed for less, we've got you. Get the 200 Mbps at only 129k. And the fastest one yet? Enjoy up to 500 Mbps at only 250k. To sign up, use the My MTN app or dial *100 *23#. Offer is valid till the 30th of November for both new and existing subscribers. Together, our connection is unstoppable.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. I'm joined by Patricia, I'm joined by Dr. Fred Mumza, I'm joined by Dr. Sam Nice and Professor Latigo. We're discussing everything grain in this country, but also we're looking at the numbers, because 3.8% of the people farm on more than 10 acres going forward, but also the biggest number, 90% of the population is in outgrowers, and some are running away to do other things that seem to be easier to get means. When we look at the poverty, the climate change, how do we make this better? We're called an agricultural country, and 68% of the people are involved in agriculture, but also more than 90% are either indirectly benefiting from agriculture. What more can we do to make this the breadbasket of the region, but also of the continent? Something here gets me, and someone says, why is agriculture an optional subject, but English language, which is a foreign language, compulsory in Uganda? Interesting. Okay. Good evening, Timothy. Thank you for the show. This is Patrick from Kawempe. How can I get good market? Right now, my good maize is ready, but the market is not proper. I can tell you the price of maize now is about 700 shillings, and we're scared of the price might even drop further. Okay, the volatility of the price, that is something that we'll talk about there. The problem with many institutions like UNBS, URA, they like to take Ugandans for granted. You, in most cases, do not care about the workshops designed to sensitize Ugandans, but also prepare them for the incoming policies, yet they are the same ones who are coming out and giving us unfulfilling reports that show how incompetent we are. What is wrong with you working with people that are implementing of standards instead of you wanting to impose a policy on the stakeholders, then blame them for not stepping up? This is Freeman. Thank you for the messages. Keep them coming. Let's get into our conversation here. Nice, let me come to you. Especially because you have been on ground, and I know you have been to Amur, you've been to Gulu, you see how agriculture that area is. But also you've seen, like what Dr. Sam said, people mortgage the farm before anything happens. There are these challenges on one hand, but there is the desire to be able to do farming there. How do we find the balance between these two?
Yes, thank you so much, Timothy. In fact, when you raised that question, it took me back to the time when I was in P3, P4. Around that time, actually, when we are growing up and you get to study the subject of science, you get to study how crops are planted, you study about the cash crops and so on and so forth. I had a small garden, a backyard garden at home. And being the curious young man I was, I planted maize. And there were a few crops that came up. And when I harvested during that time, it was 30% of them got affected by the maize borer, the stalk borer, which actually disappointed me so much. But of course, we later harvested and just ate the maize because it was just for home. But coming back to your question, when we were in Mura and Gulu, the farmers there appreciated the fact that they had fertile soils, and they kept on mentioning that here we boast of these soils because there was a time of the war, and when the war ended, okay, that time no one was using the land, but it gave it a good time for it to rejuvenate and accumulate all these nutrients and all that, and the land is now pretty fertile, and indeed it is. But how are they utilizing it to benefit them as smallholder farmers? Recognizing the fact that they have needs as also farmers, they need to facilitate their homes. They need to take their children to school. They need to undertake a number of activities to see that they sustain themselves. And in fact, there was also a question. There was a concern that was raised during that time. And it was actually the issue. I'm moving away from maize, but it was simsim, because we recognize that actually for the time we've been growing up, we've known northern Uganda as the hub of simsim. There was an initiative, they talked about it, that there was a company that saw the value of simsim in northern Uganda. And what happened was that they were giving very good farm gate prices for this simsim, and farmers were actually going to reap so much out of this. But however, as time went on, and Dr. Summers hinted on it, ethics of the farmers, they saw the benefits of selling this simsim, because actually they were exporting this simsim to UK. That's what they say. And what the farmers now, they grew, I don't know, for lack of a better word, the bad man has started. They were filling now the sacks of simsim with the sand in the middle. And when the exporters saw this, they lost the market because of the ethics. And that's why the bylaws now come in. It's like a sort of a carrot and stick approach to compel someone to follow the law, because you will not continue producing poor quality products and also doing practices that endanger the lives of other people because of your selfish gains, and then hurt the trade that Uganda has established with a number of countries. Because ideally, when there was when the stories came out of the numerous rejections, our trade was hurt. Yet if you look at the statistics right now, we had a spike in production, actually in exports, in 2020. It was in 2022. We are producing, we are exporting about 90 to 93 metric tons, but it grew to around 310,000 metric tons. There was a spike because the market was there. It just all of a sudden spiked up, and markets like Rwanda, Burundi, DRC started tapping into Ugandan maize. So it shows that there is a potential, but we as the value chain actors are misusing the opportunities that are provided by such a market. We need to get back on the ground, sensitize our farmers, our value chain actors, to appreciate the importance of these markets. We have a great potential to feed this region, but we need to follow the ethics. We need to understand the importance of issues of food safety, not endangering people's lives, but also making sure that the products we put on the market are also of quality.
And just staying with you before I get to Professor Latigo, someone mentioned the volatility of prices.
Yes.
Because maize can shoot down 500 shillings, go up to 700, can even go as far as 1,300 shillings.
Yes.
That's the grain itself.
Exactly.
Then the posho can also jump from 2,000, go to 2,500, even go as far as 2,800 per kilo.
Yes.
How do we mitigate this? Leaving the bad manners you've mentioned.
In fact, if you remember, at the time Kenya rejected our maize, it dropped by 30%. The farm gate prices dropped, especially it was in eastern Uganda. They dropped drastically, and that was not a favorable situation for our farmers. But issues of price volatility, they keep on coming, despite the fact that the borders are open. Even if the borders are open or they are closed, there is always price volatility. But what we need to do in order to counter this is that we need to organize our farmers. Our farmers are fragmented. They are operating on their own. And actually, one is that they are being exploited by the middlemen. So
how do we organize them?
We need to, I think, if you look at how the cooperatives were operating during that time, they would provide better prices for their farmers. And if you negotiate, because you see, we are looking at negotiating power of the farmers. If they negotiate for better prices under the cooperatives, and actually even the export cooperatives of farmers should be even reinstated and re-established and strengthened, because it gives a unified voice for all our value chain actors to effectively have better prices, but also avoid being exploited by middlemen who may give them cheaper prices or lower prices that will not sustain them at all. So we need to structure the farmers. We need to group them well so that they have a unified voice in issues of prices. Yes.
Thank you very much. Professor, let me come to you. I think it would be twofold. There is a growth in the border market. People are selling land to get borders. Go to Gulu. Young people are populated in the urban areas. It's like we're looking for quick cash. And you said it rightly. The young people who's teaching them to go and do this. If we say our backbone is agriculture, and then we are having a growing border economy, where are we losing it? And how do we gain it back?
Well, you know, that's why when I talked first time, I talked about dealing with the people. And until you as a country, we decide that this is where we want our people to be. These things, the freedom that they have, I really fear for our country generally, but I fear incredibly for my community in Acholi. Because what you are describing started immediately after the end of the war. One time I mentioned here that some Muzungu came from, he was not a Muzungu, he was an Asian professor in Oxford. He came to study about land grabbing. And then he called me from my farm in Noya to meet him in Gulu. And when I came to Gulu, I told him, there is nobody grabbing anybody's land here. The problem we have is that the kids who grew up in IDP camps do not understand the tradition of utilizing the land to achieve objectives. And for them, their priority is totally different from what would make land a solid foundation for transformation. They want to sell the land and go and drink. They want to sell the land, go and buy a border. They want to sell the land so that they can hook some girl that they have been targeting. And that was all. And so it came to a situation where a young boy who doesn't even know how, never even saw his grandfather, said, oh, it was my grandfather who gave you this land. The whole boundaries had disappeared in the 20 years of war. The whole boundaries, land boundaries had disappeared. Nephews who grew up with their uncles, they were told, this is not your land, go back to your place. And it created incredible social chaos. And yet, in the past, like I said, families had objectives. They see Prof's child going to school and said, my child must go to school. And the only way we can achieve that is we must grow the cotton. We must grow the food crops. Actually, my area used to supply groundnuts to Gulu, to Teso, to Lang. And that's why Agago was the education level was very high. But the inspiration to take children to school was a driver. Now there's no inspiration to make people use the land the way it should be used. There's no inspiration. The inspiration now is how somebody has survived in Kampala, how somebody is drinking very well. Those are not, so the country must impose on the citizenry the inspiration that will make them go back to what is sustainable. Because for the immediate future, what is sustainable is land. For the long-term transformation, you must transform your agriculture. India did that. They did major land reform. The standards, the discussions. If those started by how people produce, let me tell you, I've been in this, growing these crops for a while. One of the biggest challenge of a farmer in the village is the plant population per unit area. Whether they put fertilizer, your maize spacing is like this. Whether you put fertilizer, you will not get more than 10 bags per acre. And yet, if you change the spacing of maize, and you change the weeding schedule, you change the timing, and you use fertilizer, you'll get 30 bags. Now, 30 bags, you must be able to, you will just have like a program, said, oh, it is now a must that you must have a house, that your compound is clean, that your children go to school, And you got to squeeze the people in charge, which is the households, the adults in the households. Unfortunately for our politics now, our politics is bad. That's why I quit even. Because to leave households and allow them to do their things is the worst irresponsibility a country can have. It's just like leaving your children to go and drink. And you can put them down and beat them and go with them to the farm and they grow crops. They will end up rogues in the community. And the trouble they cause will multiply. And trouble even multiplies faster than progress. And that's the challenge we are facing as a country. So while we are talking about maize, we are really talking about the Ugandan, the rural household in Uganda. Do you have data on how they live? Do you have data on their aspirations now? Do we have programs that address what we know? No. You know about PDM, last year I came and at the presidential CEO forum. And when I told the president about PDM, and I said, Mama, the process was so long. She came from the village, and you'll see that the day she got the money, she had stood in the line, she had not eaten anything. And she said, when she got the money, she said, let me go and taste they call them wine, the local wine they brew in the villages. Just a small amount. And because she had an empty stomach, that wine worked on her. On the way she fell down, drunk. And the boys just took her money. And yet if we had said differently that for those who want to apply, let us see if you have a home where there are paid latrines. While they are targeting this money, you will see paid latrines in all homes. And that kind of creative mind, I don't see it in the way we are governing our country. And that's, I'm an ecologist. If the environment is wrong, if there is no rain, no matter how good your seeds are, it will not germinate. So it is, and yet it doesn't take money. All these things I'm talking about don't require money. The extension guy with a mandate, and I hope that tomorrow I can also climb and become a commissioner by hard work, will do the work. The farmer who wants to get a Mabati house with the electricity will endeavor. And if they are buying products in premium, that the quality is good, those are kind of motivations. The standards are okay, but do those middlemen pay premium for produce? No. In fact, they look at you if you seem very anxious. For them, it is an opportunity. and in the end, we are stuck in a beautiful country, wonderful climate, wonderful soils, traditionally hardworking people. I was in Piggy today, and I was amazed seeing, not far from Kampala, the Uganda women, even up to one, they are still in the field, tending to their crops. And for us, when you come from there, you say, Uganda, they must be very rich. I see them working even more than in our place now. They're drinking. Once the groundnut has come, the sunflower has come, the soybean has come, and they have sold, everything is done. the next objective is to see how powerful you are in terms of drinking. If you make drinking a punishable thing, you make lack of things in the home states a punishable thing, they will work, and the outcome is that the aggregate, when you put it together, the country's productivity will just jump up, quality will also jump up, and competitiveness with the world, the rest of the world, will be so high.
Thank you very much. Patricia, let me come to you. And I know you talked about the grain policy, you talked about the Grain Council, but there's also a proposal for the Food and Drugs Administration Authority there. How do you propose this works policy-wise, but also how does it trickle down to improve all these challenges we've mentioned? Because there's a proposal for this to happen. How would you give input into this to improve output for us?
Well, the Food Safety Act, that's the one you're talking about under Ministry of Agriculture, is really about, and remember, Ministry of Agriculture is the peak institution that deals with sanitary and phytosanitary issues. These are the challenges that arise from the farm, the pests and diseases and everything along those lines. So the Food Safety Authority is coming in to deal with areas about food that are not being coordinated, that are not being handled. There is no food safety system in the world that is not complex. Food safety is a complex matter, and it requires coordination of different entities, different stakeholders, all doing what is needed to keep the food safe. You're talking about dealing with issues, as have been mentioned, from the garden, from the issues of extension workers and getting support to the people to know what they're supposed to do, how to behave to make sure that grain is handled properly, how to transport animals, how to deal with them. Do you even have to transport them in the first place? Maybe you should do the slaughtering where they are. Why are we carrying them in such an do we say inhumane? How do you carry animals? In a manner that is just really worrying, and slaughtering them when they are very stressful. So there's a lot, the issue of the markets. Look at the drainage around our market when you go to buy food for the home, and around there how the waste is being managed, drainage, what are we doing? So there's a lot about food safety that is currently not being handled properly. So a Food Safety Authority is supposed to come and deal with that, and then to coordinate all the players. Remember, a value chain from the farm to the fork has different players at each level, and you must have all these people being coordinated to make sure the entire value chain is okay. For us, Ministry of Agriculture is at the beginning, UNBS is at the end, towards the market entry. So all of us have got to do our bit. You've got transporters, you've got storage, you've got all these players, millers, anyone adding value. All of that has to be coordinated. What is being done? Let it continue. What's not being done, fill in the gap and make sure everybody is speaking to each other. When a value chain is under control, the product that comes out is beautiful. We have the examples of coffee, we have the example of dairy, and we have worked together with Ministry of Agriculture. They deal with the beginning, we handle the end, the product goes and everything is wonderful. So these are things that can actually work, and that's what the Food Safety Authority is supposed to be coming to do, to coordinate the issues of food safety and to make sure that the gaps are filled where there's no activity being done.
There was a question about certification, requirements.
Basically, and very quickly, the requirements for certification. When you want to get certification, you start by what standard applies to me. If you want to do certification for flour, so you must educate yourself by getting that standard. You have to obtain the standard and know what's in it. The application, the certification process can be divided into three main areas: the application process itself, the evaluation process, and the decision. The application is where you provide application. By the way, this is an online system, so you don't have to come to UNBS. You can apply from any part of the country where there is internet. So you apply, your application is reviewed based to make sure that the product you're applying for, and you are actually in a premise that we can reach, is based on an existing standard. And then you pay for the application, you pay for the certification process. Then we go into the evaluation. We have to schedule an audit. We have to come and actually confirm that you exist. So the audit schedule is usually where a lot of time is taken. Right now we have a huge, we're dealing with backlog for quite a while, and because our resources are not as many as the application, the demand on us, you've got almost a 1.5 delay between the time you apply and the audit that we come for. So we audit, we assess you against the standards, the product standard and the process standards. We collect samples and we test them, we evaluate the labeling requirements, and then we give you feedback on the areas that you need to improve to make sure that you meet all requirements, if there are any that are raised. And then we go to the decision, where we have a certification review committee. Those are members who did not participate in the audit or anything that was at the beginning. They review to make sure the audit requirements were confirmed, and then the decision is made. So that's the process of certification. And certification is a process. You are demonstrating your ability to meet standards. It is not pay me money, I give you a license. No, it is about you showing that when you go through your process, you actually meet the standards. And it's got, whether you're small, medium, or large, we have people who have huge factories that have automated systems that have hardly anybody involved in that system. And then we have your small cottage industry where we have ladies. There's a lady I visited in Arua. She has a room she has kept very clean, and that's where she does her winnowing from outside. From there, you can see the difference between the raw and the clean one. Then she mills it, she packages, and has her product. The whole idea is that you have a process that does not allow contamination. So despite whatever size you are, the requirements are there for you to follow, and certification is very possible for anybody who is serious about it.
Thank you very much. Dr. Munza, let me come to you. I want to throw like 3 questions at you, but let me be kind to be able to throw one at a time. The liberalization of this market. I will find you, I will name my price. I can buy it from your farm. I can mortgage it like Dr. Sam said. It is demand and supply. It depends on what I want. We can decide to hoard the product until we see that the price goes up. Someone has just mentioned that. I know people that rent rooms in Natete and hold this maize grain until the price comes to a particular level. But they are also spraying the maize, trying to keep it. So, do we need to regulate this market? Is liberalization our problem? What is the economics here?
We certainly need to regulate the market. This is food. People put it into their bodies and can have consequences. But also you don't want to put too many stringent controls, because a liberalized market allows efficiency. There are some people who will go out because of inefficiencies, but the regulation still says, like football, if you play it well, the referee is just watching, because the rules of the game are known, and these are the rules he sets. Now you're going to get into a problem when you can't regulate the whole chain, because you are regulating me as a processor. You've given me what I need to follow. But now where am I getting the maize? Some of the problems are already there in the maize as I bring it to the factory. Now I will fail the standard. Can I go back and enforce on the person who sold me the sim with sand in it?
And you can't trace because you just bulked.
There's no traceability. So as Professor said, data about these people, for me to say this bag came from this village, and we can enforce there and track, and this fellow knows if you cheat the process, there are consequences. Which a Mtongole chief can enforce. Because that shouldn't also be too much of a cost on me. So when you liberalize, it's a good thing, but you must have the rules. Our roads are liberalized. You can put on any car, but they have rules. Keep left. Here is speed 80. Here is, and police simply stands to enforce, not to drive your car. And it's a good thing. Yeah. We all go, and I will tell you, Professor Latigo, we meet in Guru.
And because unless there is strict enforcement,
yes,
you end up with the kind of accidents that we saw recently.
Exactly, that we saw recently.
In spite of the regulations being there, enforcement must be very strict.
Enforcement must be strict and must be financed. So these enforcement agencies, you are going to set the standards. Enforcement is still sitting out there. And so you want to look at her budget, of the three things. You apply, we evaluate, we make a decision. Thereafter, she still needs to have enforcement power on all these value chains. Who gave the seed? Who did the extension service? There are very few, by the way, extension service providers. In some cases, we even had a ban on recruitment.
Should you privatize it?
And some of these. Now, when you privatize, the prices may come in, because as we said, some things government must be there.
Yeah.
You can privatize security for UBC, but you're not going to privatize enforcement on the roads. There are certain things where government must still be there.
Yeah.
You can privatize a little bit of hospitals. Some are private. But in determining who works in a hospital, at what is still a government responsibility. And that's the core that will take you to any hospital. I don't know this doctor. Anybody can put on a white coat, but I'm trusting government. This guy can't be a masquerader here. There is somebody who made sure he was trained, he passed his exams, there is a medical council, there are all those kinds. So that gives confidence to people. But it's a liberalized environment. I buy drugs, I don't know whether I pay by size, because they will tell you this small tablet is 20,000, this big tablet is 500. I don't even know whether this is not poison, but I'm trusting. There is a national drugs authority, government. That even the person here selling me the drug is a qualified pharmacist or nurse or something. So there are responsibilities that must be for government, and they become even more critical as you liberalize. Because liberalization comes with bad boys and bad girls, they want to play and take advantage. There the state must rise up even harder and have consequences. The whole point is consequences. Police catches you, this is 200,000. Next time you are going to think twice before you race. Now at night, police is not there. Now some countries, I think Tanzania, the buses are not allowed to move in the night. But here everybody says, I shall set off at 10. They know police is off. During the day, everybody is trying to look. One time I got so annoyed with a Muslim, he was putting on white. And I saw him from far away. I thought this was the police. Remember they were white at the time? So when I reached them, I'm like, this was a normal person in his village moving. But you have no idea how much adrenaline my body poured. That's what made me angry. So government must be there, that where government is, the Q mark holds. I don't stop because I know these policemen. It is the uniform. The moment I see the uniform, I will stop. Then I can read the name and say, okay, how are you? But this is from my village, then we can even talk to the lab. But I stopped in the first place because government was in there. So liberalization is not a problem. It actually comes with some problems, but the ways around it are not there. It is the best thing you can still have, because now I can buy. I know you can bring a cooperative. By the time we wound up cooperatives 30 years ago, they had failed to pay the coffee farmers. They had failed themselves to enforce things. But now when coffee in Uganda is running, and we've been calculating some numbers, every day at times we are pumping 12 billion shillings into the coffee sector per day. All this money is not coming from any government agencies. That's the liberalized market. People find their money from Germany, from the Italians, from the banks, but because coffee is a cash. If you don't give me cash, my sack of coffee remains here. Now, you don't want to disrupt that market, but you still want to regulate it. So we have those tricky things, and this study on maize brings them out very well. Ultimately, this is food. It is the responsibility of government. And at times when you see these countries saying, don't bring your adulterated maize or bad maize here, they are protecting their citizens. But as we are saying, where did the maize go? Now, for us, at the border, some of the maize we are eating in our markets have not gone through her processes. So I have no idea what I am eating. Because somebody gets maize from the village, mills it, we come and buy it in ladles, go and cook and eat. What we have eaten, we have no idea. So there are a number of things that we really need to address to protect our people. The whole point is, how do we finance these processes? And leaving room for the private sector to bring in their money. Government, be thin on the ground like salt in the food, but you must be felt. It's not about how much salt comes in. The salt could be enough, but we all know there is salt here, and we comply. So for me, those are some of the issues we must have. Enablers and the drivers. Agriculture, people are doing it for a living. This is what Prof said. People are not planting to feed you and me. They must have a drive. Do I want to get my child in school? Do I want a Mabati house? Do I want... So they are doing agriculture to achieve their objectives. And for them, some of them, the objectives are too low. So they are not bothered. Some of them, the standards, they want to cheat. As the word is say, if a dog knew what money does, they would steal our money and go and buy themselves meat. Because the butcher will sell them the meat. He doesn't mind who... Now, some people are selling us anything because they are looking for money. Put in a stone because it's going to be weighed 100 kilograms. Once you have gone, you never even know who gave me the stone. Traceability. So I think Prof raises an important thing, and which we have been trying to want data. Can I come and say how much maize in Noya so that I begin to plan how much money do we need to evacuate it, to process it, and then I can assure the market person. Say, guys, I will bring 200,000 tons next month. If you don't do that, you are going to compete with the Pakistanis and Tanzanians. Because for them, when I need 200,000 tons in August, they will bring it. The Ugandan is neither sure whether the 100 tons he has bought don't have 20 tons of stones, and then the other 2 tons of aflatoxin. That assurance, the market needs it. And we had thought by liberalizing and regulating, it will come through.
Doctor, before I get to Dr. Sam, storage. I was not there, but they say our parents really stored the seed in the granaries. Today, storage, should it be nationalized? People are storing in... I am renting a room in Natete and I'm storing food there. I'm storing food in a room that we're not using. Like Dr. Sam said, I'm storing food within a bedroom.
Yes.
The measures of this, how do we manage storage so that we can be able to mitigate the price, both farm gate, miller, and export?
I think storage has many dimensions about it, and she has talked about standards. First of all, where you are storing the food, that store should be meeting the standards. For either whether it's maize, whether it is what. The granary was a normal thing, but this was home consumption.
At home, yeah.
Really. Yeah. But also it followed the certain criteria. People knew what the granary looked like. I remember there was smearing with cow dung.
And it was safe. Now, you store in the granary, you wake up the next morning, there will be nothing.
That's why people are sleeping with it in the bedroom. But now the bedroom was not meant for maize. But you must sleep with your maize, with your cassava there, with your simsim here. And remember, this is a small hut. Your basin is here. You're cooking for... Is that a store? Is that a bedroom? Is that a what? A chimney? Or some kind of, you know... A lot of things have come up.
How do we store it better? How,
so we need
if I am deep in the village, I am in my 2-bedroom house, with my little measures to meet Patricia's standards, how do I do that?
These are really the tough things we need to look at, because just any 4-cornered room is not a store for food. But this is what is happening in Natete, this is what is happening in Mbale, this is what is happening in... Somebody just gets a room, rents it, fills it with food. And then when he comes and finds weevils, he gets any spray. You don't even know what you are using. Because there is no standard on those guys of pesticides, agrochemicals. But in their own language and knowledge, local knowledge, they have known if you spray this, the weevils die. Nobody has done any scientific evidence on how long that pest remains on the food. And if it kills the weevils, hasn't it also affected many other things, the ecosystems? So there is a lot to do. We can do it. But one of the other things from a business case, as we've said, you don't want to load too much onto the people that the cost of compliance becomes prohibitive. Because that also sends them back into the underground. And then they become even harder to find. Because we must eat. But if our standards are too high and we have not calculated the cost to help them, not that you should lower our standard. But you want to say, how do we help them to meet the standard? So for me, coordination of all the moving parts is key. And as we said earlier, Mitiana, the Mubende, the maize is there. This is a tourism road. But this road is a nightmare. So I also want to sit with Katumba Amara and say, General Amara and all these decentralized district roads, I don't know what roads, because it is the arteries that eventually take the blood to every cell. What is the nature of our road network? The road people have what they call the choke points. This road is okay, 20 kilometers, but down the road is a river without a bridge. So can we bring all these and say we may not do the entire road grading, but that bridge must be done. The truck will take another longer time, but at least it will reach. But if there is that bridge undone, it won't even take the 2 days. It literally won't go there. Now that guy begins to store his maize, the price will go down because nobody is reaching them. So there are a number of things that we must coordinate. One government concept, as we have discussed. Let's bring up all these issues. Let everybody see their roles. Then we go and budget better. We plan better. We implement better. The local governments have a big, big role to play because they are the last mile on that ground.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sam, let me come to you. You know, every box of cereal that I see at my home has made in Kenya. I've not seen one that has made in Uganda. Yet I know off maize, you can still make cereal. I know its byproducts can be cooking oil. They can go as far as brand and go as far as, you know, whatever you want out of maize. When you look at this whole value chain of the maize grain, do we need to specialize? In China, some areas are specific in what they grow. I was trying to read to see which districts, except Mubende that Patricia mentioned, which districts are specifically growing maize. It is everywhere. And yes, we're blaming extension workers, yes, we're pointing fingers at... Do we need to specialize to have, where are the farmers, where are the millers, where is the value addition, where is the export, to give us traceability of that?
Yeah, sure, we need that. We need a national framework that guides the production of maize. Our maize is not branded. Okay? So if I'm looking for, if I'm in Kenya and I'm looking for maize from Uganda, how do I tell that this is from Uganda? When I was in South Sudan, for them they told me that maize from Uganda tastes better. And for me, I could not understand what is better. Because they said maize from Uganda, maize flour from Uganda, it is sweet. So we need to be intentional to brand our maize. And you cannot brand your maize unless you have standardized. And one of the challenges we are having is the inputs. We have different seeds our farmers plant, but also the climate conditions vary. The one of Kapchora take longer to mature because of the weather conditions. The one of Mubende is different. Now, you aggregate one from Masindi, one from Mubende, but also the seeds you planted are different. Professor talked about for him being exposed, he planted in Zimbabwe, taking 76 days. Now for me, I'll take a longer 8, longer 7, longer 10, and I mix it with the Zimbabwe. I don't know how that maize flour will taste. So we have that challenge of standardizing our products, branding our product, so that when someone sees it on the market, he's able to tell that this flour is from Uganda. But also the taste should be the same. Now, one of the opportunities we've been having is having a fortified maize flour on the market. Maganjo is doing that. They export up to Canada because the product is standardized. But the other products, the other maize flour we have on the market, and even the maize mills are not standardized. Okay? So the way they mill the flour varies from one maize mill to another maize mill. So this is one of the challenges Patricia need to think about of standardizing the product, and that's how we can be able to penetrate the global market and also to maintain our region. But also ask me a question earlier about the climate change.
Yes.
Now the climate change, Uganda has good laws to protect our environment, very good laws. The challenge is enforcing the laws. Now we have elected leaders. Elected leaders cannot enforce the laws because they want to be elected. Now you have the civil servants who claim to not be well facilitated with the transport to go and enforce this. So that's why I find that the forests are being destroyed. We are losing natural forests and they replace eucalyptus trees. The swamps have been destroyed. So you used to have 2 rain seasons where, yes, now we have 1.5, and this affects production of our crops. So once there is no good enforcement about protecting the environment, we shall have challenges of sustaining the production of having 2 seasons per year. You can talk about irrigation, is more complex. How much do I need to invest in that? But also regulating irrigation. The one time I was attending a session where someone said that you need a machine that measures the moisture content to be able to tell you that the water is now enough, don't irrigate. And for us, when it has not rained 1 week, we say there is no rain, it is dry. But the ground may still have more water. So even irrigation needs technical knowledge on how to do this. But if you're talking about commercializing agriculture, can you irrigate 1,000 acres of land? Is it economical? So we need to be intentional on protecting the environment, and we are highly short-term oriented. I rather cut the trees and I burn charcoal, and I get a return, I get some income from charcoal, other than looking at sustaining agriculture. Because agriculture can only be sustained without protecting the environment. So we are more individualistic other than being collectivistic, working together to be able to serve the environment for the future, being strategic on how to produce more.
And the stem could be used for biofuel there.
Yes.
But let me come to Nice. Nice, you know, there are push and pull factors, especially for any agricultural product, but looking at maize particularly. When you look at, you know, weather patterns and all these things that we're talking about, specifically, how can finance or finances or government or anyone else, a private player, angel, people want finances, where would they put their money? This whole chain has a lot of places. Where would we put our money and be able to get really returns or a ripple effect?
We need to, one, study the market. We have a principle at Siatini where we believe that market is a precursor to production. You need to first establish where you're going to sell your products, and then you sell the product. Because if you produce just out of hearsay or market forces or demand that you cannot control, you might end up failing. You need to first establish your market, negotiate the standards, negotiate an agreement that is favorable to your farmers, to the value chain actors, so that they can ably reap out of where they intend to invest. And also, if you look at the allocations to the agricultural sector in Uganda, we are still below the commitments that were made in the Malabo Declaration. But however, we need to industrialize. In an economy where our farmers even have no access to simple instruments like a moisture meter, and they have to depend on biting the maize to establish if it is dry or not. We are still a long way from transforming our agriculture. So we need to move from the opaque way of doing things and industrialize. Let us establish facilities. There's need for common user facilities, for instance, regional common user facilities, where value addition can be met, especially for the farmers. If you look at even the industrial parks that are being established in the different regions, we know that agriculture is one of those sectors that has the backward and forward linkages. So if you raise the question about those districts that are prominent in production of maize, we need to establish facilities in those areas where we know that there is high production of maize. Those facilities make, because they have close proximity to the farmer, it is very easy for a farmer to transport their produce to such a facility and then add value to it and earn a better price for their product. In fact, we mentioned a number of products that are out of maize. We are looking at pharmaceuticals. We're looking at there are even organic plastics these days. I hear there are developments in that. There is corn syrup, which is used in production of confectionaries. But if you look at how we are producing, we're not adding value. Let us also mirror some of the initiatives in the top producers. Right now in Africa, it is South Africa and Nigeria that are the biggest producers of maize. And corn, they export it. South Africa exports to Vietnam, it exports to South Korea, and Nigeria too. They've put structures, they've put systems, they've put laws in place that have enabled them.
Thank you. Let me read some feedback so that I can give you parting shots. Timothy, good evening. Greetings to Professor Latigo. Yes, the maize mission is possible. Uganda can feed East Africa and Southern Africa so long as we reorganize our agriculture and food system throughout the coordination of public-private partnership across the entire value chain. We need to improve the seed system, appropriate mechanization, viable land tenure system, segmentation of agriculture processes and storage systems. This is Patrick from Tororo. Thank you, Patrick. Agriculture officers in our district in Karamoja, the government should work on the following challenges: price fluctuation, poor quality of seeds, shortage of transport meeting farmers, shortage of chemicals, bureaucracy in departments respectively. Okay. Someone also continues to say, I am really disappointed, especially with the policymakers. There are very good comments on this problem by the panelists today, but I pray that the policymakers can be able to listen and resolve this problem. Difficult times are ahead, and we need to brace ourselves. The high cost of production, but the low cost of maize during the peak season. Okay, thank you very much. This is Ojara from Amur districts. I work with J-Pool organization and Ochera Agriculture Corporation. The biggest challenge that is there is when it comes to standards. The qualities needed means also increase in production, cost of production, sorry, but also the challenge comes with the price and not the motive of the producers or the farmers. Two, the cost of improving the seeds to buy, the price is high. Why can't government install learning centers, install post-harvest handling machines like grain dryers and sorters in the different areas? Middlemen need to be stopped. They are using a lot of whip to explore and exploit the extension, the farmers there. Finally, good evening, Timothy. The maize in the industry in Uganda is plagued with challenges both unique to it and those in agriculture generally. With the decline of soil fertility and dependence on rain practices, productivity is low, making the cost of production high. That's why, for instance, in parts of Uganda like Kanungu, Tanzanian rice is either cheaper or cost of the same that the locals prefer. Further, as long as we do not buy or sell commodities based on the quality of output, the farmer has no incentive to handle the crops properly. This is Benjamin in Kampala. Okay. I will start with the lady here. I'll give each of you 2 minutes of parting shots. I'll go to Dr. Mumza, Dr. Sam, Nice, and finally Professor Latigo.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so my parting shots very quickly. Regulation is very clear.
Yes.
And every stakeholder that is required to regulate needs to be supported. So when you're thinking of the value chain, you can't support one entity and not the other. Everybody must be supported to be able to close this gap, and coordination is key, both public and private. We need to have stakeholder engagement, and stakeholder engagement for every sector. The consumers are actually one of the strongest regulators in any country when they are aware of their rights and their need for quality products. So we have to get the issue of quality and standards to the consumers, to the producers, to the millers, to the aggregators, to every level of the value chain, so that they understand their role. And the value chain is different. Entry levels are different for different players. It is very difficult to talk about certification for the farmers. UNBS is not going to get to that level, but there's where the farmer enters the value chain, then the aggregator comes in, then the millers, then the exporters. So if we have this in an organized and coordinated manner, with each party playing their role, then this value chain becomes an orderly place. We're going to have to stick to the rules and make sure that everybody is doing what is required so that it can work. We have the commodities exchange that is already talking. This is going to help to deal with the pricing issue. When there's abundance of maize, what do you do with it? If you store it properly, that is money that you can keep and help to control the prices of the maize over the whole entire year, despite the different production levels. So the issue is this: can we organize this market, be coordinated, and make sure that we are all doing what is required of us? We can actually build this into a really viable entity. Maize is different. You see, when you have other products like wheat, you know the numbers that you're dealing with, and for those ones they are required to fortify from the beginning. Maize is, you have millers who are huge, you have millers down the road, you have millers as you said, they are keeping grain in the house. So maize has a very unique way of being handled, and we shouldn't ignore that, because it is both historically a food product and a cash product. So we need to coordinate and organize this in a very good way, and I'm really confident with the effort that's being made at the Ministry of Trade. The National Coordination Forum has started this, bringing the different players together, and I'm very hopeful that there's going to be a good improvement in this area.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you.
Dr. Fred.
Well, mine is to really say the conversation has brought up the issues, the research. It's just not just about maize. It speaks for many other value chains. It speaks to the things we need to do to get from the, we have potential. We can. You have to do something about the potential. You can't just say I have potential. And so this conversation, for me, I really want to appreciate the facilitation that has brought us this far. The financing for this study came directly from the Ministry of Finance on the sanctioning of the permanent Secretary of Treasury, Ramadan Gobi, and this is part of his effort to bring out the tenfold growth, because these issues must be addressed so that we have inclusive growth. So I really want also to appreciate the management at Makerere University Business School. Professor Maize has supported this. This is a study that has taken long. It began with Professor Barunya when he was still there, and has been one of the principal researchers, plus the other researchers that have been part of this. Edith, we have people like Ronette, Dr. Ronette, Sam is here, there's been Vicky, our administrator here, and then we also have Kikoma and Sekakubo, and myself. These people have brought it to come through, but also to appreciate UBC.
Thank you.
I know everybody reaches you, and so we have been in this conversation, and we are not stopping here. As we've said, we want to engage all these stakeholders, make sure how do we coordinate. So we're going to get back to the Ministry of Finance and say these are the issues, and just not maize. Maize was a sample. It can cut across everybody. We really want to make this work because we can feed the region.
Thank you. Dr. Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Timothy. The issues are to do with quality. We need to be mindful and intentional on quality, but also sustaining our production, because in case you get export market, can you be able to sustain quality and quantity? But also we need to see that the 2 million households that are benefiting from maize, this is protected, and also we add more households if we are to fight poverty. We need to enforce standards, and the elected leaders may not do this.
Thank you.
So we need government, but the question is, can Uganda feed East and Southern Africa? Yes and no.
Okay, interesting answer. Nice.
Thank you so much, Timothy. I think parting shots, I'll say that we need to strengthen our compliance to standards. 2, we need to build the capacity of the value chain actors. 3, we need to create platforms for engagement between the producers, the exporters, the private sector, and the local and the government. both local and the central government. I appreciate initiatives taken by Trademark Africa, which has led some of the developments of these bylaws, and also the projects that we've implemented in Gulu and Amuru, and we are looking forward to further scaling up this to even the entire grain sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Lastly, Professor Latigo.
Well, I thank my colleagues for the various perspectives that they presented to the country. But I'll just go back again to my point, that if we don't focus on our people as they are, and we do everything to transform them, these challenges will remain. Unfortunately, with population increase, urbanization, and climate change, it is even going to be worse. It will not be about exports. It's about how we sustain our communities. So it is high time that we appeal to government that technical debates are held to define policies and actions by government. When we just came, I left academia. Do governments still engage with you people, the technical people, on some of these issues? I hope that after such a conversation on television, the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Trade, you sit people down so that this is expounded and transformed into government policy and program. Because if the farmer down there becomes a very technical farmer and his production goes up, even the issue of price doesn't arise, because if now they're getting 5 bags per acre, they want to earn $1 million from it. You can't. But if they're getting 20 bags per acre or 30 bags, they will earn from that same 1 acre $1 million. And because they want the 30 bags, they will do the right things in production, including post-harvest processes that give them money.
Thank you very much. I want to read this last one. It comes from Dr. Godfrey Ahabwe, former Member of Parliament, but also former Minister of State for Local Government. He sends regards to all of you, especially Professor Latigo. He says he knows you very well. He'll make his contributions later. But gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for coming. Thank you also for watching and also dropping your comments here. I also want to thank the production team for making this possible. Dr. Sam and Dr. Mhumza, thank you for allowing us to have such a very important conversation, because this needs to cascade to our whole agricultural sector. And I hope the powers that be have listened. We'll end with this quote: "He who wants to stay under a tree at old age must plant a tree today." Good morning.
UBC, inspiring Uganda. In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archive stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Israel proved to be a terrorist entity that lies a lot. So let's ask the one that has proven to be a liar in politics and everything.
Joe Biden's deteriorating health was covered up by his administration during his presidency. That's the conclusion of a congressional report by a Republican-run committee. The investigation focused on a key claim that most documents issued by Biden's office weren't actually signed by him, and thus raises the question of who was actually making decisions.
This report includes 47 hours worth of transcripts and testimony revealing that every executive action signed by the auto pen without written authorization from President Biden should be voided. This is an unprecedented situation in American politics and government. The actions of President Biden simply were not all his own actions, and there are major implications to that, including all the pardons that he signed. Nothing this incredible and insane has happened before. This was not something that the forefathers anticipated.
Well, the Oversight Committee says it found considerable evidence that high-ranking White House officials, quote, exercise the authority of the former president. They allegedly acted without consent from Joe Biden himself, using an auto pen to sign executive orders on his behalf, including many controversial pardons. Well, incumbent Attorney General Pam Bondi says her office is now reviewing the congressional report and its ramifications. Back in January, just days before handing over the White House to Donald Trump, Joe Biden pardoned a number of officials, including his own family members, apparently protect them from a looming crackdown. Well, joining us now from Tennessee is American constitutional lawyer and political commentator Robert Barnes. Mr. Barnes, you're most welcome. We generally had an idea that this was the case. It's cropped up in previous months about the pen, etc. But this is the first time on record that former Biden aides have spoken in front of Congress. It's gone on record. How significant is this?
Well, it is extraordinary. There's been suspicion that frequently the decisions made in the White House are made by other people, whether one calls it the deep state, whether one calls it other advisors. President Wilson, towards the end of his term, there was doubts about whether he was really running the White House or his wife was running it. So it's not completely unprecedented, but it's mostly unprecedented to the scope. And the question then becomes what legal consequences attended to it. If you had decisions being made in the name of the president, including decisions concerning war, decisions concerning foreign policy, decisions concerning the management of the federal government, decisions concerning pardons, are any of those capable of being set aside because the president doesn't appear to have been either cognizant or capable of making those actual decisions, and other people were making them in his name? It's a form of forgery and fabrication of political authority, and it tests our legal system in ways it never has before.
Well, that's the thing. At the time, many of his aides were saying he's fully capable, he's cognizant, he's making decisions. And now it's coming out that many of those aides barely spoke to him over the periods of his years in charge. And I suppose it begs the question, Did they think that the rest of us couldn't see with our own eyes what was happening at the time? And what now happens in terms of that if it is found to be lies?
That is a very open question. I mean, I think our legal system is going to be very skeptical of trying to determine whether or not these decisions can be set aside because of the reliance and expectation interests that are already vested in individuals that received pardons and things of that nature. So I don't anticipate any of those actual decisions being ultimately set aside, but it may ultimately call for legislative reform to preclude and prevent this from reoccurring in the future. Because while it has been long suspected that often other people pull the strings of those in the White House, to see it literally happen in live time is unsettling for most Americans.
So you don't see this going to court?
I think it's highly unlikely that even if it were to go to court, that any of the courts would set it aside. This has been raised in the past when Congress has passed legislation that might have been procured by bribery, that might have been procured by violation of the rules. There's a long investigation of whether the 16th Amendment authorizing the income tax actually passed the various legislatures that it purported to pass. And what the courts have historically said is they're not going to examine how the sausage gets made in American law because they don't want to look at how ugly that might be.
Just on one very specific issue, that of those being, the people being pardoned by the auto pen, their situation, is it now in limbo? Are they at liberty? Could they be going back to jail? There's 1,001 questions here, isn't there?
No question there is. There's going to be people that are worried and nervous about it. People like Anthony Fauci, people who sat on the January 6th committee. Those kind of people who are involved in deep-seated crimes, in Fauci's case, bioweapons all around the world, including potentially even COVID, that he may have been complicit in, secretly funding and authorizing. He was granted a complete pardon for over a decade, going back to when there were bioweapon labs in Ukraine that he was involved with and connected to. So he would be the person that's the most nervous tonight about pardons getting set aside. It's assumed that Biden's brother and son are protected because those were some of the few pardons that he actually personally signed. But Fauci's pardon was an auto pen signature. And if his pardon gets taken away, all of a sudden all that bioweapons criminal activity could get fully exposed in a court of law.
Yeah, big ramifications. We could be on the cusp of, let's wait and see what comes out of it. Robert, thanks for breaking it all down for us. American constitutional lawyer and political commentator, Mr. Robert Barnes. The United Nations General Assembly has overwhelmingly called for an end to the U.S. economic embargo on Cuba, with 165 votes in favour, 7 against. Washington's UN envoy defended the sanctions, accused Cubans of fighting for Russia in the Ukraine conflict, then left the hall during the speech of the island nation's representative.
The United States will not shrink from speaking truth about the abuses of the Cuban regime. Its failings are the cause of its economic dysfunction, and it continues to collaborate with enemies and adversaries of the United States against our interests, including actively supporting Russia's war in Ukraine. The United States will continue to promote accountability for the communist regime and their reprehensible behavior on and off the island.
We have listened to the shameful, threatening, arrogant, false, and cynical statement of the new permanent representative of the United States who left the hall. As we expected, knowing where he came from and knowing about his connections with the Secretary of State and with military contractors.
Will the United States convinced Argentina, Hungary, North Macedonia, Paraguay and Ukraine to join it and Israel in voting against the resolution to lift the 33-year embargo? Economic restrictions, though, began well before that, back in 1960, following the Cuban Revolution, and have since been preventing American businesses and citizens from trading, officially at least, with the island. Venezuela's UN ambassador says the ongoing blockade inflicts severe losses and damage to ordinary people, with his country now also in Washington's crosshairs.
The blockade continues to wreak devastating losses and damage. The cumulative effects of the economic suffocation imposed from outside for generations is equivalent to the destruction resulting from a war. We in Venezuela know exactly what we're talking about because we are the target of a similar attack.
Well, according to Donald Trump and the U.S. Secretary of War, the American military has killed over 50 people in strikes on so-called drug smuggling vessels in less than 2 months. That's led to increasing tensions with the Venezuelan government. Most recently, 4 more boats were taken out by U.S. forces in waters off the South American coast. The Pentagon chief has stated that so-called narco-terrorists are being, quote, hunted and killed.
Yesterday at the Pacific, the department has spent over 2 decades defending other homelands. Now we're defending our own. These narco-terrorists have killed more Americans than Al-Qaeda, and they will be treated the same. We will track them, we will network them, and then we will hunt and kill them.
Well, Venezuelans have flooded their capital streets to speak out against the Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister for allowing a U.S. warship to dock there for military drills. Caracas has also suspended a gas deal with Port of Spain while denouncing the dual island nation, calling it a launchpad for attacks. Well, in South Africa, the Economic Freedom Fighters Party has called Washington's actions in the Caribbean destabilising. We heard from EFF MP Nicobile Makalongo, who says it's clear to her the White House is after Venezuela's vast natural riches.
They are just using the narcotics and the drugs. They're claiming that they're coming from